Matt and Scott, welcome. It's good to be with you guys. You guys have had a long journey. Scott, you in particular, have had a longer journey in this paradigm. Matt, it's only been 10 years.
Only 10 years.
Only 10 years. It's been a long time for you as well. But bring us, either one of you, whoever wants to start, but talk to us about the journey of understanding, getting back to the book of Acts as a framework piece, the way of Christ and his apostles. Tell us about that journey and why you're committed to these processes and this paradigm today.
Sure, yeah. For me, it was something that I was always dissatisfied with the explanation of what church was, growing up in the church. And I was inquisitive and trying to figure things out, and the questions I would ask weren't getting answered in any satisfactory way. And so when I first encountered Acts as a paradigm, not just as a history book, it was really eye-opening to understand that this was Christ's plan all along. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, things started making sense.
What do you mean Acts was a paradigm?
It's the set of patterns that unlocks the whole New Testament and Christ's whole plan in a way that actually works to establish churches as families, which I grew up hearing, we're a family, mm-hmm. in the churches I was in, but I never saw people actually living as families or experience that. So that was probably 22 years ago or so that I first encountered that idea, and it caught my attention right away. So I wanted to stick with this and figure it out. I was frustrated I couldn't just take 6 months and understand the whole thing. It's taken a long time to understand all of it, and I'm still learning. But I have just continued to chase this down with you and other leaders that have been a little ahead of me on this. And so it's just been part of my ongoing development to not just change my own thinking, but to shape the churches that I'm a part of, mm-hmm. And the ongoing work, even connect to Matt and what we're doing together. So
you're leading some churches today, but you go back to the 90s, there's some overlap it's a tangled web here. There's some leaders that are part of our global team now that you were with. There, two of them actually, in fact, right? Or a third one is passed on now. But just give us a quick, from the 90s up till today, how you got deeper and deeper in, how really the Spirit just put things in front of you and leaders ahead of you to introduce, then to really begin to understand, and then really root things, which is really kind of the stage you're in now of rooting things. But give us a brief summary of that, because I know it's a rich history. We want to pull people into understanding it.
So when I first encountered these ideas and got connected to one of these global leaders that you're talking about, that's when I understood there's something else going on that I haven't figured out, and I wanted to understand it more. So I kind of attached myself to that leader. Mm-hmm. The church we were in at the time, things didn't quite work out the way we were hoping for, and so we ended up having to switch situations around and ended up in a spot a little bit further away, probably about 40 miles away, where there was another leader those two leaders had been in a conversation, probably like a 5 or 6 year conversation, connected with the global team here at the time and figuring those things out. So we ended up in that spot, and I was still pretty young in understanding these things and trying to figure them out. But there was another leader who'd been working in Albania for a number of years doing these things on the ground in Albania, who out of the war that happened in Kosovo ended up coming back here to the States. And I basically attached myself to that leader for 15 years, learning in classroom and study settings, but also learning right alongside them in the actual ministry that was happening. And those two things combined together, I think made a significant difference, as well as the attachment back to the global team here. So what you guys were working on and developing was getting to me as you developed it, and was entering into the conversation we were having together in our leadership, but also in our churches. Mm-hmm. And that's been, that was 15 years. And then that leader recently, who now is a part of the global team and is overseeing a lot of the different works and situations across Europe, ended up moving back to the Midwest, where their roots are, because of some family things that needed to be addressed and helped with. And so that was kind of the time for me to make a decision of, okay, am I still just going to be the person who's kind of tailing along, or am I going to step up and take some leadership role in that situation that he was leaving from and that I was remaining in? So.
Yeah. So you've stepped up. You've you didn't sign up for anything in a sense, but you've said this is significant, and you're leading churches. You're both of you are in the New Jersey, New York area. And it's been fun working with you these last years, just seeing your passion, seeing your story, and how God wants to use all of us to push the book of Acts more into his world. So Matt, you ran a team, an organization that looked at this. Was it actually precisely 10 years ago? Or tell us just a little bit about your journey. And kind of a timeline of your journey here.
It was around 9 or 10 years ago where I started encountering some of these ideas. And one of the things that really sticks out to me is I had been involved in traditional Western-style church plants connected to a denomination in the inner city in Paterson, New Jersey. Was also leading an organization, a nonprofit organization, for about 10 years or so. And there were problems that I was encountering, paradigm issues, and there were insufficient solutions, to put it that way. That was really one of the things that was striking to me. So, as I'm encountering these ideas and I'm learning about the church being a family and actually being, operating as a family, not like a family, and experiencing some of these challenges and issues, and really just caused me to lean into some of these ideas that much more, and really seeing the value in churches gathering as families patterned after Acts, like that. And so, it's been about 10 years or so of going through and leaning into these ideas and really gaining a greater understanding. But I think a real key part of it for me was how this whole framework in Acts and Paul's letters and throughout the New Testament of how it can provide this. It provides this framework for solving problems in a real in a sufficient way, because so many of the solutions that were provided in a lot of Western paradigm ways were just kind of insufficient. They weren't really working in our context.
So you, through running that organization, you worked with 70, 80.
Yeah, it was about 80 churches around New Jersey. Yeah,
around Paterson, New Jersey.
Mostly Paterson, but
mostly Paterson. Yeah. Okay. So. But simultaneously, at some point in the 10 years, you began to start your own church, right?
Yeah, actually,
or was that after?
Starting the church was first, and then I got involved in the nonprofit work. Yeah.
So why'd you start a church? Why'd you plant a church? Why didn't you just go attend somewhere?
Yeah. I really just felt called to. Actually, my wife and I were living overseas. We're plugged into a church in Okinawa, Japan. Yeah. And we felt like the Lord was leading us back to New Jersey, where I grew up. And part of our heart was to plant a church in New Jersey, connected with the denomination that we were part of. And so that was part of it. And we had support from the leadership there and all of those things. But our church plant was very outside the box compared to most within that denomination, because we were in the heart of a poor urban area, and So a lot of the practices and principles of that denominations were not transferable into our context. And that's what caused some of the problems for us. And interestingly, along the way, as I was starting to get into some deeper training in Acts and Pauline epistles and starting to implement some first principles, we started realizing, so we would have, our church met in a movie theater in a traditional style way. And then after church, we would go to the pizza place next door and we would share a meal together. And so we were kind of backing our way into a gathering type format. But then what happened is we would share a meal together, and then we would have about 5 or 10 people that were really engaged in what we were doing, and we would go into the back of the movie theater and have first principles discussion. And we started realizing, man, we're doing all of this work, doing a traditional Western type service, but the real fruit is just coming by sitting down and sharing a meal and then having a discussion around some of these ideas. And we saw more fruit in just going through the first book of the First Principles than I saw in preaching all of the sermons that I could ever want to preach and preaching my heart out in front of people. But the fruit really came from having dialogue and conversation. And so that started to really flip my paradigm, like, oh, we're actually doing what a family does. And this is how you can have people on the process of growing to maturity.
How many years ago was that flip happening?
This was probably 2016, 2017, somewhere around there. So
yeah, 6, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Yeah. Okay.
So
that's a great story. Again, you can see the fingerprints through your journey there.
I don't think I'd heard that story before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, it also explains why he's a New York Yankees fan. You grew up there. I mean, I think 80% of the time I interact with you, you're wearing that same Yankees hat. Is it the same Yankees hat, or do you have multiple of the same hats?
So I actually have.
We gotta unpack this. This is very important.
I have had about 5 of those exact same Yankee hats because they get worn out, and then I buy a new one to replace it. And the worn out one I use to do yard work, and then eventually they go down and they get thrown out.
Okay, so you do throw them away.
I do eventually, yeah.
That's very, very important to understand.
I'm due to get a new one nowadays, though.
Okay, it's important to know the details of your hat habits. So let's talk about the future. Yeah. You guys are in the same region and been talking a lot about how this paradigm and we need more families and more churches. And you've really, both of you had carried a vision of just stewarding this in a particular field and being more involved in the global field as well. So each of you unpack that a little bit. What does the future look like? What are you excited about in the future? What are you hoping to do? Why are you excited about the future? There's 3 or 4 questions in there. Take any of them and talk to us about the future, about your region.
I think being in the region we're in feels exciting. The reason I'm in where I am is because I loved New York City. So I ended up there because of its proximity to the city. And so seeing the need that is there for churches as families, there's lots of church there. There's lots of church things there, but I don't see churches that live together as families. And so understanding that that is a need and then figuring out how to get there has been part of that journey, and partnering with Matt and being able to have that vision together and say, okay, how are we going to work together to see a network of churches as families multiplied from what we have existing, but also planning in new situations. That's what is exciting to me, and also getting connected to through the network we have with Build, getting connected to other situations that are already doing that around North America and around the world, but particularly in North America, to be able to partner together to shape our existing situations, and then to partner with some of those global leaders to expand into ethnic diaspora church plants. So I think that's a significant part of our vision.
Yeah. So we were talking just yesterday about New York City. It's a melting pot. But in the network, there's what was the list of them? Indian. There was Myanmar. Maybe there was Albanian, Kosovoans. There was that are all
possibly Arabic speaking, and even other. There are other Asian cultures as well that are the high school in Clifton. Now this is just Clifton. We're talking about a bigger area, but the city where I am, there's 86 languages represented in the high school. So in some sense, the world is on our doorstep.
Right there.
But having the connection to global leaders who have some sort of relationship with ethnic communities in the area already makes that a much more likely prospect to be able to actually plant churches.
Sounds like a potential for Ephesus type place, because you've got, we have 2 leaders that are here at this global conference from Asian countries, and they're visiting those places ahead or after. And so that you can see how things are slowly coming together for a hub in that region. Matt, what's your thoughts about the future? And
yeah, well, let me put it this way. I think at some point we all have to ask ourselves, do we actually believe that we can see in our day the kinds of things that we read about in the books of Acts and the New Testament and in the first 3 centuries of Christianity in particular? And I believe we can if we adhere to Christ's plan and his strategy as it's laid out for us in the New Testament. So that's kind of what excites me. I love the New York, New Jersey area. Yeah, I'm a Yankee fan and all that kind of stuff, but that's where I was born and raised, and so I want to see that. I want to see said about our area the kind of things that you see in the 6 different panels in Acts, where they had all things in common and nobody among them lacked, and they were all of one heart and one mind, and so those are the kinds of things that get me excited. And I believe that God wants to have that happen in our region if we are obedient to his plan.
Yeah, from your lips to God's ears. Let's make that a reality and work hard towards that as best we can in our lifetime. I was going to mention, you took me to that jazz club. Blue Note Jazz Club. We got to give a shout out to the Blue Note Jazz Club. Man, that's some good jazz.
You weren't there for that.
I missed that. Yeah.
Okay, well, I know you were there.
Next time.
You brought me there. Yeah, you missed it. It was an epic. Quite a city, but quite the stewardship. And we may not see a lot of it in our generation. We don't know, but to your point, attaching ourselves to Christ's plan and Paul's traditioning process that he gave us, the patterns. I'm looking forward to working in the melting pot with you in the years ahead.
Likewise.
All right, until then.